Welcome to the Meditation Summit. Today I'm speaking with a good friend to Sounds True, neuropsychologist, senior fellow of the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley, and New York Times bestselling author Rick Hanson. His books include Hardwiring Happiness and Buddha's Brain, and with Sounds True, Rick has created several audio programs and online courses, titles such as The Enlightened Brain, Meditations for Happiness, and Self-Directed Brain Change. Rick, welcome to the Meditation Summit.
Tammy, I'm really happy to be here, actually.
I believe you. Rick, you're bringing a unique contribution to the Meditation Summit with your background and work as a neuropsychologist and your understanding of the mechanisms of the brain, along with being a longtime student of Buddhism and meditation teacher within a Buddhist framework. So help us understand how bringing these two, we could say, traditions of deep practice and inquiry together, neuropsychology and Buddhism, can help us expand and deepen our meditation practice.
I think that's a great question. And it's one that's really preoccupied me. We start right where we are, right? Sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're not. Sometimes we're irritated or anxious. Other times we have a sense of calm strength. Sometimes we feel frustrated, disappointed, or grabbing after the pleasures of life. Other times we feel already content, already full. Sometimes we feel hurt, inadequate, envious, aggressive, toward others. Other times we feel loved, cared about, seen, wanted, and also compassionate, kind, and loving ourselves, right? So the question then becomes, how come? We go from one to the other, and how can we rest more stably in a fundamentally unconditional sense of well-being, increasingly not based upon the conditions around us? How do we actually do that? And that's where, for me, the intersection of psychology, brain science, and Buddhist wisdom really come together, because the Buddha pointed out that much of our suffering, small and large, most of it small in everyday life, basically boils down to what he called craving, which essentially is a sense of a not enoughness of something in the moment, and or a sense of disturbance in some way, a kind of unsettledness. And then on the basis of that, we, fight what's unpleasant, chase what's pleasant, cling to what's heartfelt, and want whatever's neutral in our lives or in our experience of living to hurry up and get happy, right? And as a neuropsychologist grounded in, a reflection on evolution, it's quite profound to consider what causes craving. Why do squirrels, lizards, mice, monkeys, Stone Agers, and modern humans today feel a sense of emptiness inside or a sense of disturbance inside, especially really poignantly, ironically, when we're living such lives of luxury compared, not all of us obviously, but many of us, most of us even in the developed parts of the world, living lives of luxury compared to those who lived 100 or 10,000 years ago. And what interests me in terms of the meditations we're going to be exploring really soon is how to rest our minds upon that which calls us. Because in the famous saying from brain science, neurons that fire together wire together. So the more that we rest our minds upon what's wholesome, what's peaceful, what's contented, what's loving, the more we rest our minds upon authentic states of genuine well-being, the more that will become our habit, our inclination, and our baseline nature, from which we still engage life. We drive in traffic, we manage issues with young puppies or older teenagers, we do things the best we can to help the world be a better place, but we can do so through repeated practice, and it does take practice, on the basis of an increasingly bone-deep sense of fullness and balance rather than deficit and disturbance. And I find that incredibly helpful.
Now, Rick, I think most people can probably connect to this feeling of something's incomplete. I crave something. I want something. I'm always moving towards the next moment to get something. What do we know about the brain and that state of craving that most of us find ourselves in most of the time?
Yeah. So the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago, and modern neuropsychology inside the frame of evolution teaches the same thing today, that we're designed to survive and pass on genes that pass on genes by reacting, by coping with life and adapting to things that change. The Buddha taught, and again, modern neuropsychology says, we can do this in basically two kinds of ways. In other words, if there are things that are threatening to our primary need for safety, we can go into fight or flight response or freeze, the human equivalent of playing dead. There's a lot of circuitry in the brain that's designed to do that, involving the sympathetic nervous system or the stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline. Or alternately, we can see the same challenge to safety, the same big truck driving next to us on the freeway, the same issue with our health that we need to manage, the same safety issue for someone that we love is facing. We can cope with it, we can adapt to it, but on the basis of an underlying sense of calm strength, a kind of inner peace that doesn't tip into fear or anger or helplessness. As I put it, we don't need to go into the red zone. So we kind of have these choices as animals, as very sophisticated human animals, moment to moment to moment. How will we deal with things like threats to safety, or how will we deal with opportunities for satisfaction or frustrations of satisfaction, our second primary need? And also, how will we deal with issues in our relationships or opportunities in our relationships so that we fulfill our primary need for connection? That's really the question. The question is not, are we going to, cope with life or deal with crud of one kind or another, right? As Alan Watts put it, life is wiggly. Stuff's going to happen. The question is, how do you build muscles inside? In effect, how do you change the circuitry of your own brain, embedded in your nervous system, embedded in your body as a whole, in such a way that you can deal with the stuff of life, including the wonderful opportunities in life, on the basis of a deeply internal sense of inner peace and contentment and love that's already hardwired into you. And to me, through repeated practice, as the great contemplative teachers, not just in Buddhism, have taught, through repeatedly resting your mind upon, the wholesome or what's useful, you do gradually grow it inside you. And there's tons of research these days that shows lasting changes in your own nervous system based on repeated practice. Thickening of layers of cortex, changing relationships between parts of the brain so they can work together in a more cooperative and integrated way, changing patterns of reactivity in key parts of the brain like the amygdala, the alarm bell of the brain. So it calms down, it lets you know when there's a real issue, but it doesn't go ballistic. Your practice, your whoever you are, including me, because I try to practice too, our practice, especially that practice which we do repeatedly and with a depth of engagement, is truly weaving itself into the fabric of our own body, especially our nervous system, and therefore weaving itself into the fabric of our life. And what's wonderful is to use opportunities in daily life to do micro meditations where just for a moment you rest in whatever's beneficial. And then more formally, especially if you're willing to do something regularly, which is my own personal commitment, every day, at least a minute or more every day, again, there too, by kind of marinating in whatever you feel and think would be beneficial for you, and maybe your teachers are pointing out to you, by resting there, your mind and therefore your brain will gradually take that shape.
What I'd love to do, Rick, is actually do this meditation for resting in our wholesome, non-craving nature. And then maybe at the end, afterwards, we could explore some of the micro meditations that would allow us to bring that into our daily life. How does that sound?
That sounds wonderful.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so we're going to go into a meditation here for about 20 minutes. Obviously, best not to do this while driving. And I first want to say that there are many kinds of meditation. I'm not claiming this is the only kind. You might find aspects of this that would be useful for you, whoever's listening or seeing or doing this, that you can apply to other practices that you do. Or if you like, you can, like I do, make this kind of practice a pretty fundamental part of what you do routinely. And so here we go. To begin, come home. Take a breath with your eyes open or closed. Come into being here now. Feeling your body. Knowing that you can always adapt or change my suggestions to whatever works for you. And if there's anything uncomfortable along the way, including tuning into your body, feel free to alter my suggestions into something that feels good and wise for you. That said, if you can, coming in touch with your breathing. And as a foundation here, establishing an increasingly stable present moment awareness. Mind not wandering off, letting go of whatever is passing through awareness, not struggling with it, not chasing it, letting it be. Letting go of working or doing. Making only the most minimal effort to keep staying present with your body, with the sensations of breathing. Letting this moment be, moment after moment. Finding a posture that helps you stay comfortable and alert. Allowing sounds to pass through awareness, thoughts. Not trying to stop thinking. Simply letting the stream of consciousness keep streaming on by as you rest peacefully, presently, by the side of the stream. And then, as a way to help your mind rest more and more deeply in three fundamental refuges and resources for us, grounded in our own evolution, resources of peace in terms of our needs for safety, contentment in terms of our needs for satisfaction, and love in terms of our needs for connection. I'll use that as a map gently here in this meditation beginning with our first and perhaps most fundamental need of all, which is for a sense of safety, so that there can be a growing sense of fullness and balance related to safety, rather than there being a shortage of safety or a disturbance there. And distress, you're not trying to make anything up, no stress or strain here, more of an opening to what's actually true and helping yourself very gently, just the minimum amount of help that's useful here, helping yourself increasingly rest in a sense of peace. So I'll offer a few little suggestions and see if they're useful to you in letting go of any unnecessary anxiety right now, letting go of any unnecessary tension, any guarding or bracing. So to begin with, see if you can really relax. Letting go in some long exhalations, letting tension flow out of your body, relaxing. Also, noticing that you're actually basically all right now. Being aware if there's enough air to breathe. The body goes on being. In this moment, and this one, and the next one, you're actually all right now. You may not have been all right in the past, you may not be all right in the future, but now, what a relief. You're actually okay. No terrible thing is happening in this moment. No one is attacking you in this moment. Wow, letting go. You're actually all right. Also, if it's helpful, being aware of protections around you. Perhaps walls, perhaps being in a setting that's relatively protected. Whatever is true. Perhaps people in your life that would come through for you, broader systems of civil society, healthcare system, whatever's imperfect about it is true. And also, whatever is true about protection is also the case. Recognizing and feeling authentically protected, also a way to gently help unnecessary anxiety or irritability to fall away. and opening increasingly into a growing sense of tranquility and peace. Feeling increasingly authentically unthreatened, not at war with anything inside you or around you. Letting go of all that. No need for it. Abiding as peace. Not straining, not chasing peace, falling open into a well-deserved, grounded sense of calm strength and peace. And then letting the sense of peace move more to the background of awareness. Whatever quality of peace is there for you. And now focusing more on opening to, gently encouraging, allowing a growing sense of contentment, a sense of well-being in this moment as it is, without needing it to be any different or any more than what it is. For example, deliberately being aware of one or more things you feel grateful for or glad about already. Not getting caught up in stories, more a kind of gentle receiving, finding of a sense of gladness already, a sense of a life in which so many good things have already happened. Whatever might be missing or difficult is also true, certainly. And also, meanwhile, so many factually based opportunities to have a sense of fullness and contentment. Letting go of any unnecessary frustration, disappointment, knowing that you can still dream big dreams and go after important goals, but without needing to approach them from frustration or disappointment or drivenness. Being alive and engaged, but on the basis of feeling already happy deep down. It's perfectly fine to think of things that bring a little smile. Letting your mind become increasingly colored by, pervaded by a kind of sweetness already. Being aware of and letting go of any kind of grasping after the next moment or chasing any experience. No need for that. And then in the third step here, letting any sense of contentment or sweetness or fullness already move to the back of awareness. And now we'll focus on our third primary need for connection. Opening to, without struggle, a kind of gentle opening to, a flowing in and a flowing out of love. For example, without getting complicated about it, bringing to mind one or more beings who care about you, even if the relationship is not perfect, and using this recognition of actually being cared about one way or another to naturally help you feel cared about in one way or another, such as feeling liked, or that you are seen by someone in your life today or in your past, humans, other animals like dogs or cats, spiritual beings, teachers, groups of beings, groups of people. Just recognizing some of the many genuine bases, really, for feeling cared about. If not feeling so cared about arises, that's very normal. That could also be part of the truth. and resting your mind, your heart, your whole body more and more, helping yourself feel more and more, one way or another, that you are cared about and loved. Taking as your object of attention here what you're resting your mind upon, one aspect or another of feeling included, appreciated, liked, and loved. Also being aware of your own warm heart, the ways that you are loving, gently encouraging a feeling of your own kindness or friendliness or compassion or love toward others. Feeling your own lovingness right now. Love flowing in, love flowing out, helping there be a falling away of unnecessary struggle in your mind with other people, falling away of unnecessary envy or resentment. Feelings of inadequacy or hurt falling away. As you rest increasingly in whatever is genuinely available to you. A quality of warm-heartedness, lovingness, flowing in and flowing out. And then as we move toward an end here in this practice, taking a final minute or so to rest in a global sense of peace and contentment and love, with a sense of it as your natural home base. Undisturbed, already full, open and relaxed, as peace and contentment and love.
Thank you, Rick.
Well, it's my pleasure, and we can transition here more into active conversation and mental activity while maintaining some fundamental centering in, resting in a deep sense, maybe a background sense of all rightness and enoughness, even as we engage, the next thing coming around the bend.
One question I have for you about the practice, and I'm sure you hear this from people quite often, is in the midst of that practice where we're working with these positive states that we're falling into, how do you suggest people work with difficulties that arise when, they're dropping into contentment, but what they're finding is something like pain or sorrow? What's your suggestion?
Well, it's a very important question. So my first suggestion is to honor the question and to understand that it's very, very natural. A way into understanding this is to appreciate that your brain is a vast network. And so it's natural that when you're dropping into a greater sense of safety, for your brain to associate to past history in which you were not safe, or in the present, a sense of feeling threatened, or, as you say, around contentment. There could be a sense of, how I don't have enough in my life, or I wish I had more money, or, I'm really struggling to put food on the table for my family, perhaps. It's very, very natural. And I want to stress the point here. You're not trying to look at the world through rose-colored glasses or deny anything that's difficult. In the total mosaic of your own experience and in reality altogether around you, you're including those tiles that are flashing bright red, right? And also you're trying to help yourself rest your attention upon what is authentically, objectively available to you in terms of the tiles that are green, as it were, that are wholesome, beneficial, positive, wise, loving, virtuous, and so forth. And much as in any meditation, there is a deliberate, stance toward your experience. Some meditations, which I practice a lot myself and extremely value, you move into a radical, choiceless awareness in your relationship to the stream of consciousness. You're not trying to nudge it in any way. And also, it's okay to do certain meditations, and that's the kind I was teaching here, in which gently you're encouraging some things, you're cultivating things, such as compassion practice or loving kindness practice. And as you do that, you're not trying to fight those other things that draw you. You're simply disengaging from them and returning attention back to what you want to rest it upon, which in this case is what you're trying to cultivate inside yourself. And for me, peace and contentment and love.
Now talk to me about the rewiring process, if you will, and how a meditation like we just did actually helps rewire my responses to life. And how long does it take, by the way?
Right. Well, in your question, is the fact that with repetition, as you do practices such as the one I'm suggesting here, it becomes easier and easier to come home to it, and it becomes more and more your resting state. So over time, your mind is less and less drawn toward those painful, difficult things past the point that's useful to you. I think it's important to engage those painful, difficult things, obviously, to the extent that's useful. But if you're sitting there in your meditation and you keep ruminating about something you're worrying about and can't affect, or some hurtful thing that happened, that's not very useful. I mean, part of meditative practice is to be able to regulate attention and bring it back to what you do want it to rest it upon. And as modern science shows, as you do that, you actually build neural structure. You start connecting new neurons together. You bring more blood to parts of the brain that are kind of wholesome and calming. Parts of the brain or circuits or patterns of brain activity that go red, go negative as it were, they gradually lose their power. Those connections actually start withering away. And in terms of how long it takes, I think there's this great technical term in brain science, mo beta. In other words, what I mean is more episodes of practice, especially in the flow of everyday life, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment, not just in formal practice, and then mo beta in terms of engagement, depth of engagement in those episodes. So then in terms of how long it takes, for one, it depends on where the person starts, and people have different degrees to which their minds are very distracted or jumpy or have been traumatized or they're maybe temperamentally disposed toward melancholy or depression or anxiety or irritability. It really kind of depends on the person. That said, my personal observation is that almost everyone says that when they're actually engaged in a meditative practice, not just sitting there with their mind wandering or building their to-do list for the day while they're sitting on their cushion, right, in their proper posture, but they're actually really meditating. Really quickly, people report that it casts a long good shadow over the course of a single day. Days that you meditate feel different. That's really true for me. And over time, you really gather some momentum. So, mo beta.
And talk to me about the neurological connection, if you will, between formal practice and the on-the-spot, everyday techniques that we're going to talk about in a moment.
Yeah, it's kind of a mystery, actually, this fundamental question of what's the relationship between practices of various kinds people do and any kind of lasting result. In this, for me personally and professionally, is a real inquiry of mine, how to actually turbocharge that relationship so that the things we do, formally and informally, listening to a Sounds True program, I'm a fan of your whole library, or any other kind of things that we do, how do we turbocharge them? I call it taking in the good. How do we really help those things that we're doing, formally and informally, have the maximum effect, right? So it's still pretty much an open question. Generally what's found is mo beta. In other words, more episodes of practice, more duration in those episodes, more intensity, more embodied engagement. Feel it in your body. So in terms of the connection in neuroscience between formal practice and informal practice, one of the major findings is do a variety of things, not just one thing. It's a little bit like CrossFit training, the people who do different kinds of things tend to get more than people who do just one thing. Also, it seems to show that formal practice anchors the impact or increases the impact of informal things in everyday life. I think that's a really useful and common sense finding. And it's also important to not make a sharp line. I think some people tend to do this between their formal practice and the rest of their life. In other words, it's like they go into the Serenity channel, when they're doing their meditation, but in the rest of their life, dog eat dog. No, you want to help and protect and gently get on the side of whatever is wholesome, wise, beneficial, healing in your formal practices and kind of protect them so they don't just vanish as soon as you get up from the cushion. And then you are going to see more changes in stress chemistry, brain structure, heart rate variability, the resting state of your breathing patterns. You're going to see those changes, in a scientific sense, and also, most importantly, the people around you are going to see and experience those changes as well. I'm really, for me, it's when my wife notices that something is changing in me for the better, then I'm really start getting confident that my practice is paying off.
Our partners always know.
Damn them.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
So, Rick, to conclude, tell us about cultivating peace and inner strength on the go, if you will, and what you found works the best.
Yeah. Basically, what you rest your mind upon is will gradually shape your brain and your mind and your life for better or worse. So I certainly try to see the threats in terms of safety or other issues for satisfaction and connection, say. I try to see them and cope with them and deal with them, sure. But as much as I can, 5, 10, 20, 30 times a day, I try to, for a breath, or 3 or 5 breaths in a row. There's no magic number. There's probably a threshold around at least a few seconds. Otherwise, that experience hasn't been stable long enough to begin to get encoded as some kind of lasting change for the better inside yourself, in terms of your own nervous system and body altogether. At least a few seconds in a row, half dozen times a day, typically longer. I look for a moment to register a sense of, I don't need to be afraid. I may need to be cautious. I may need to be vigilant. I may need to be strong. I may need to set a boundary, but I don't need to be needlessly anxious or irritated or helpless in terms of my safety needs. And I can rest there for at least 5, 10, 20 seconds in a row over the course of the day. Same thing. I've got a long to-do list every day, probably like most people. I'm interested in pleasure in life. I live a middle-class life. I want to enjoy my life. Sure, but can I relate to trying to get things done over the course of the day without a sense of drivenness? Can I rest my mind and deliberately marinate in, take in the good, 5, 10, 20, 30 seconds in a row, hardwired into myself a sense of getting stuff done without being all pressured about it inside myself, without getting all tense unnecessarily about it. Also, can I really enjoy what might be beautiful? Looking out the window and seeing flowers, enjoying, how good this cookie tastes. Can I do that and really feel the fullness of it, feeling grateful for it, frankly, like, oh my goodness, a cookie, right? A chocolate chip cookie. I'm not sure King Louis XIV, or Marie Antoinette ever had a chocolate chip cookie, right out of the oven that we get to just have easily today. Really resting in that, and especially relationships. That's the universal medicine. That's the ultimate medicine. Relationship, feeling loved and loving, because it helps us feel safe and satisfied, as well as certainly connected. To look for those ordinary moments. Like right here with you, Tammy, you've been a benefactor for me over many years. I feel quite grateful to you, and I have a sense of trust and safety and security in my attachment to you. Right here, boom, that's an opportunity. Or you're walking down the street and some stranger smiles at you in passing as they walk on by. It's just a little moment, but wow, what an opportunity to feel, connected. All right, I don't need to get agitated or disturbed or feel like there's a not enoughness of the ways that connection is real for me in my life. So yeah, I'm very motivated to do this on a daily basis. And part of what motivates me is a very hard-headed recognition that doing this practice of resting my mind repeatedly upon what is beneficial for me grows resources inside me or inside any other person, muscles, if you will, that we can draw upon for difficult things in life. We need to grow these psychological resources inside because life is often difficult. And for some people, it's really difficult all the time. And the other thing that motivates me is this hard-headed knowledge that the brain has what scientists call a negativity bias. I say it's like Velcro for the bad, Teflon for the good. It's designed, to suck in the crud, because that's what keeps critters alive, in the Serengeti, and they live to see the sunrise. But today it means that we are drawn toward the negative and we overlearn from it in a sense. We hardwire the negative way quickly. We're designed to do this. So by recognizing that and tilting toward what's actually beneficial and wholesome and useful and wise in your everyday life, if you tilt in that direction, you're actually just leveling the playing field. And knowing those two things, that this everyday practice, 5 seconds here, 30 seconds there, 5, 10 times a day, is building psychological muscles inside and is correcting for a kind of bug in the Stone Age brain in the 21st century, that really helps motivate me to do this practice, which is also very enjoyable most of the time.
Rick, thank you so much for being part of the Meditation Summit. You, I think, have taught so many people how to take in the good, including me. So when you made that comment about Sounds True being a benefactor, I took a moment. I took in the good. I let it sink in. So
Great.
thank you, and thanks for introducing that phrase, taking in the good. I think it's so powerful for people.
Thank you.